On December 11, 1994, the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, was electric with anticipation. It was the final night of the National Finals Rodeo, NFR, the ultimate battleground for the world's best bull riders. Among them was Brent Thurman, a 25-year-old rising star, already carving his name into the history of the sport. Thurman wasn't just another cowboy chasing a dream. He was a founding member of the Professional Bull Riders, PBR, and a fierce competitor known for his skill, determination, and love for the sport. But on this night, fate had other plans. As he prepared for his ride, an uncharacteristic unease lingered. He turned to Aaron Samas, a fellow rider who had previously faced the bull he was about to ride. "What do you think of Red Wolf?" he asked, his voice carrying a rare edge of uncertainty. The chute opened. Red Wolf exploded into the arena, bucking with unrelenting force. Thurman held tight, his body instinctively moving with the bull's powerful kicks and twists. The crowd roared as he hit 4 seconds, then 5. He was still in control. Then, everything changed. Thurman was thrown. Most riders know how to take a fall, how to roll away from danger, but this fall was different. His hand became tangled in his bull rope, a deadly mistake. Before he could break free, Red Wolf dragged him beneath its pounding hooves. Then, the fatal moment. 2,000 pounds of fury came crashing down onto the back of Thurman's head and neck. The arena fell silent. For a moment, a flicker of life. He lifted his head, as if trying to fight his way back, but the damage was catastrophic. His body went still. The Justin Sports Medicine team rushed in. EMTs worked frantically, loading him onto a stretcher and rushing him to University Medical Center. But the injuries, severe cranial and facial fractures, were beyond repair. Brent Thurman never regained consciousness. 6 days later, on December 17, 1994, the rodeo world received the devastating news. Brent Thurman was gone. His funeral at the Travis County Exposition Center in Austin, Texas, was a sorrowful gathering of family, friends, and fellow riders who struggled to say goodbye to a man who had once seemed unstoppable. But legends never truly die.
Zachary Nagel knew the risks of bull riding. Everyone in the sport does. It's not a matter of if you'll get hurt, but when and how bad. But no amount of experience could have prepared the 24-year-old for what happened on February 7th, 2025, in Palmetto, Florida. It was supposed to be another high-energy night at the Conley Invitational, filled with roaring crowds, snorting bulls, and the thrill of 8-second rides. Zach climbed onto the chute like he'd done countless times before, adrenaline pumping, completely unaware that he was about to have a literal near-death experience in front of a packed arena. Seconds into his ride, everything went wrong. The bull launched forward, bucking wildly, and in the chaos, its horn slipped beneath Zach's helmet and punctured the side of his neck. Not a scrape, not a graze, but a full-on goring that nicked his jugular and clipped part of his carotid artery. The arena, once filled with cheering, turned instantly silent as blood began pouring from a 6-inch gash in his throat. Panic set in, but Zach didn't lose consciousness immediately. Instead, he recalled trying to breathe through what felt like a growing weight on his chest. He later described thinking, "I'm not ready to die," while desperately clutching his neck. It was raw, terrifying, and absolutely real. First responders sprinted into action. Within moments, paramedics were at his side, applying pressure to the wound and trying to keep him conscious. Zach lost nearly 2 gallons of blood right there on the dirt, and yet somehow the quick intervention saved his life. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, where trauma surgeons worked quickly to repair the damage. In the hours that followed, family, friends, and fans held their breath. The injury was so severe that doctors weren't sure if he'd even survive the night. He spent days in the ICU, with tubes helping him breathe and medical teams monitoring every heartbeat and every flicker of progress. And somehow, against all odds, Zach pulled through. He emerged from surgery with his life, a brutally stitched neck wound, and a deep new appreciation for everything he'd nearly lost. His recovery wasn't just physical. Emotionally, the experience left a mark. It's not every day you're gored in front of a crowd, lose nearly all your blood, and live to tell the tale. For a while, there was talk he might never return to the sport. But if bull riders are anything, they're stubborn, passionate, and a little bit insane in the best way. Over the next few months, Zach leaned on his faith, his support system, and his sheer willpower. He openly shared his journey, posting hospital updates, thanking medical staff, and crediting God for his survival. Fans rallied around him. A GoFundMe was launched, well-wishers sent messages, and fellow riders called him a miracle. By late May, in what can only be described as an incredible comeback, Zach announced that he was getting back on the bull. Not because he had something to prove, but because this sport is in his blood, literally and figuratively. What happened to Zachary Nagel was a stark reminder of the brutal reality behind the rodeo spotlight. It's not all cowboy hats and waving to the crowd. Sometimes it's a fight for your life in the dirt, and survival depends on a combination of skill, luck, and the speed of your emergency crew. Zach didn't just survive, he inspired. His story became a testament to resilience, grit, and the sheer unpredictability of life in the arena. And while that Florida bull may have won the moment, Zach Nagel walked away with something far greater, a second chance and the guts to climb back on.
It was July 30th, 1989, a day that would forever be etched into rodeo history. The Cheyenne Frontier Days finals were in full swing, the crowd roaring with anticipation as one of the sport's brightest stars prepared for his next ride. Lane Frost, just 25 years old, was already a legend, a world champion bull rider with a fearless spirit, a magnetic personality, and a future that seemed limitless. But no one in that arena could have known they were about to witness his final ride. Lane was born on October 12, 1963, in Lane, Oklahoma, raised in the heart of rodeo country. His father, Clyde, was a cowboy, but young Lane didn't take to the sport immediately. Something changed along the way, though. And once the fire was lit, there was no stopping him. By the late 80s, he had become one of the most electrifying names in rodeo. In 1987, he reached the peak of his career, winning the World Championship. The following year, he accomplished the impossible, conquering Red Rock, a bull that had never been successfully ridden for the full 8 seconds. Lane wasn't just a competitor. He was an icon, a hero to fans, and a friend to his fellow riders. But fate had other plans. That July day in 1989, the Wyoming sky hung heavy and gray, the air thick with the scent of damp dirt. Lane was up against a powerful, unpredictable bull named Taking Care of Business. As the gate flew open, Lane held firm, riding with the same unshakable confidence that had made him a champion. The crowd erupted as he made the 8-second mark, earning an impressive 85 points. But in rodeo, the danger doesn't end with the whistle. As Lane dismounted, disaster struck. He landed awkwardly in front of the bull. In a split second, the beast lunged forward, its horn striking Lane's ribs with devastating force. He stumbled, tried to regain his footing, then collapsed face first into the Wyoming dirt. The arena fell into a stunned silence. Dr. Skip Ross, the first responder, rushed to his side, but the injuries were catastrophic. A broken rib had punctured Lane's heart. For 90 desperate minutes, medical personnel fought to save him, but it was too late. Lane Frost, the cowboy who had stared down death time and time again, was gone. His death sent shockwaves through the rodeo world. His closest friends, including Cody Lambert and Tuff Hedeman, were devastated. Determined to honor his friend's memory, Cody created something that would change the sport forever. The protective vest that is now a standard in bull riding, a life-saving innovation born from tragedy. But Lane's legacy didn't end there. His story inspired a new generation of riders. J.B. Mauney, one of the greatest bull riders of all time, has often credited Lane as one of his biggest influences. His life was immortalized in the 1994 film 8 Seconds, with Luke Perry bringing his story to the big screen and introducing his legend to an even wider audience. For those who were there that day, for those who heard the gasp of the crowd and watched a legend fall, the memory of Lane Frost will never fade. His story is one of triumph and tragedy, of a man who lived fearlessly and rode until the very end. And in the heart of every bull rider who steps into the arena, Lane still rides on.
In the world of professional bull riding, few names carry as much weight and legacy as Lane Frost, a young man with a big smile, a bigger heart, and talent that could only be described as once in a generation. Born and raised in rodeo life, Lane wasn't just good at riding bulls, he was magnetic. Fans didn't just watch him for the thrill of the ride. They watched because he had that rare combination of grit, grace, and humility. At only 25 years old, he had already achieved what many only dream of, becoming the 1987 PRCA World Champion and rising to icon status in the rodeo circuit. But on July 30th, 1989, at the Cheyenne Frontier Days Rodeo in Wyoming, one of the biggest events on the circuit, the sport lost one of its brightest stars in a moment that would forever change rodeo history. That day, Lane was matched with a bull ominously named Taken Care of Business, a 1,900-pound beast that lived up to its name. Lane did what he did best. He held on for 8 perfect seconds, scoring a clean ride that had the crowd roaring. But what came after is the part no one saw coming. As Lane dismounted and turned to move away, the bull spun back unexpectedly and struck him in the side with its horn. It wasn't a brutal toss or a wild trampling, just a single hit, but it was in the worst possible place. The horn broke several ribs, and one of them punctured Lane's heart and lungs. At first, the seriousness of the injury wasn't clear. Rodeo riders get banged up all the time, but this was different. Despite emergency medical efforts on the arena floor and a rush to the hospital, Lane died shortly after. The rodeo world was stunned. This wasn't just the loss of a champion, it was the loss of someone who embodied everything good about the sport: sportsmanship, courage, kindness, and a relentless drive to be better. Lane's death sent shockwaves across the community, but it also sparked an urgent conversation about rider safety. At the time, protective vests weren't required. Most riders didn't wear them, thinking they were cumbersome or unnecessary. But after Lane's death, that attitude changed fast. In fact, one of his close friends and fellow bull riders, Cody Lambert, developed the first widely used protective vest in Lane's memory. Today, such vests are mandatory in most rodeo circuits, and they've undoubtedly saved countless lives. So while Lane's life ended too soon, his legacy lived on. Not just in the fans who remember his dazzling performances or the film 8 Seconds that told his story, but in the very gear that now protects every bull rider who climbs into the chute. His story is one of triumph and tragedy, of heart and heartbreak. Lane Frost wasn't just a rodeo cowboy. He was a symbol of bravery and humility in a sport that demands both in every single ride. His final moments were a cruel reminder of how dangerous the sport can be, but the changes that followed proved that even in tragedy, something meaningful can emerge. To this day, people visit his grave in Oklahoma, leave flowers, belt buckles, and notes, and remember the young man who did more than ride bulls. He changed the rodeo forever.
It was July 24th, 2007, in Salt Lake City, Utah. The air was thick with anticipation as the days of 47 Rodeo, one of the most prestigious events in the country, was in full swing. Among the riders that night was 19-year-old Tag Elliott, a rising star from Thatcher, Utah. At just 19, he had already made a name for himself. The 2006 Utah High School Rodeo champion, the second-place finisher at the National College Rodeo Finals, and now ranked 24th in the world as a professional. This ride wasn't just another challenge. It was an opportunity to climb higher, to prove he belonged with the best. But fate had other plans. Tag had drawn Werewolf, a fitting name for a bull that was more monster than beast. A hulking, 1,500-pound force of pure aggression, known for unpredictable movements and a vicious streak that sent even seasoned riders crashing to the dirt. This wasn't just a test of skill, it was survival. The tension in the arena was suffocating as Tag climbed onto Werewolf's back, gripping the bull rope with the confidence of a man who had spent years chasing this very moment. The seconds dragged, the crowd fell silent, and then the chute blasted open. Werewolf erupted into the arena like an unleashed demon, kicking and twisting with raw, uncontainable fury. Tag barely had time to react before, crack, a sickening impact. Werewolf's horn struck Tag with unrelenting force, smashing into the right side of his face. The blow was devastating. His eye socket shattered, his jaw snapped like brittle wood. Teeth flew from his mouth as his body went limp, unconscious before he even hit the ground. The crowd's roar turned into a horrified silence. For an agonizing moment, Tag lay motionless in the dirt. No movement, no sign of life. The rodeo clowns sprinted in, forming a protective shield around him, waving frantically to distract the raging bull. Other cowboys rushed in, eyes wide with fear, because they knew. They had seen bad wrecks before, but this was different. In the stands, a man bolted from his seat. Chris Haim, an off-duty ambulance driver, had seen enough injuries to recognize a life-threatening situation. His instincts took over. He ran for the arena, yelling for the paramedics to bring the ambulance closer. Every second counted. Tag was rushed to LDS Hospital, his condition growing worse with every mile. The damage was beyond anything the doctors had anticipated. Every bone on the right side of his face was broken. His jaw and eye socket were obliterated. Most of his teeth were gone. And during emergency surgery, the nightmare worsened. Tag's heart stopped. Twice, doctors fought to bring him back. Twice, he hovered on the brink of death. For days, he drifted between unconsciousness and unbearable pain. He had no memory of the accident, no recollection of the moment his world changed forever. When he finally opened his eyes, reality came crashing down. His face was shattered, his body weak, his career hanging by a thread. The road ahead was brutal. 20 months, more than 20 surgeries. The doctors rebuilt his face piece by piece, but nothing could heal the deeper wounds, the doubts, the whispers that maybe, just maybe, this was the end of his bull riding days. But giving up, that was never an option. "This is my job. This is how I make a living," Tag said, his voice unwavering. He wasn't searching for a way out. He was waiting for one thing, the green light to ride again. His family never pressured him, never asked him to walk away. They stood by him through every surgery, every grueling day of recovery, every moment of pain. And when the time came, when the doctors finally cleared him to return to the sport that nearly took his life, Tag did the only thing he knew how to do. He got back on the bull. By 2009, he cautiously re-entered competition, determined to reclaim his place among the elite. He trained relentlessly, pushing his body beyond its limits, proving to himself and the world that he was still the cowboy he had always been. Even after an arm injury later slowed him down, Tag remained tied to the rodeo world, working on his ranch in Idaho, still a cowboy at heart.
March 24th, 2000 wasn't supposed to be anything more than another adrenaline-charged night in Albuquerque at the Ty Murray Invitational, one of the marquee events in the Professional Bull Riders (PBR) circuit. The crowd was buzzing, the dirt was packed, and the bulls were as wild and unpredictable as ever. Among the competitors was a 23-year-old Canadian bull rider named Glenn Keelley, known for his humble demeanor, gutsy rides, and growing promise in the world of professional rodeo. Glenn wasn't the flashiest rider, but he had heart, loads of it. That night, he drew a bull with a name that sounded more like a country song than a monster, Promised Land. But make no mistake, this bull was a beast, an 1,800-pound wrecking ball with hooves, attitude, and a fierce reputation for launching riders like popcorn from a hot pan. Glenn had never ridden a bull of this caliber before, and although he had nothing to prove, he strapped in like a man determined to hang on. As the chute opened, Promised Land exploded out like a freight train with a jetpack. Glenn held on for just about 2 seconds before being violently bucked off. It was quick, too quick. He hit the ground hard and landed on his side. But the danger in bull riding isn't just the fall, it's what happens next. Before Glenn could scramble away or the bullfighters could step in, Promised Land did what bulls sometimes tragically do. He turned and came down, his hoof slamming square into Glenn's chest. The impact was catastrophic. The arena went from roaring to eerily silent in an instant. Bullfighters rushed in, medical personnel were on the scene within seconds, but the damage was already done. Glenn was rushed to a nearby hospital, but he succumbed to his internal injuries shortly after. It was a devastating blow to the PBR community. Glenn Keelley became the first rider to ever die in a PBR-sanctioned event. The loss of Glenn Keelley hit hard. He wasn't just another cowboy chasing glory. He was a beloved son, a rising star, and a respected rider among his peers. Hailing from Alberta, Canada, Glenn had that quiet determination that made people root for him. He wasn't chasing fame. He was just doing what he loved, riding bulls with grit and grace. His death was a painful reminder of how unforgiving the sport could be. It sparked renewed conversations about safety equipment, rider training, and the brutal reality that even in a sport where toughness is the currency, fragility still lurks one misstep away. In the wake of his passing, the PBR and the broader rodeo world mourned, paid tribute, and quietly questioned how to better protect the athletes who put their lives on the line for 8 seconds of glory. Today, Glenn Keelley's legacy lives on, especially in Canada, where the Glenn Keelley Memorial Bull Riding event is held annually to honor his memory and support young riders who share the same fire he had. His story is etched into the lore of the sport, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to the kind of courage that defines bull riders. He may not have ridden Promised Land for the full 8 seconds, but in those brief moments, Glenn Keelley rode with everything he had, and for that, he earned the respect of an entire sport.
It was 1995 in Las Vegas, a night that would go down in rodeo history for all the wrong reasons. Inside the MGM Grand, the energy crackled with anticipation. Thousands of fans packed the arena, waiting to witness a battle between man and beast. But they had no idea they were about to see one of the most terrifying moments the sport had ever known. Tuff Hedeman, a name that struck both respect and awe in the rodeo world, was at the peak of his career. A 3-time world champion, fearless and relentless, he had faced the toughest bulls and always found a way to come out on top. But this night, his opponent wasn't just any bull, it was Bodacious. The name alone sent chills down the spine of every bull rider. Bodacious was no ordinary animal, he was a monster, a living nightmare wrapped in muscle and fury. Nicknamed the world's most dangerous bull, he was notorious for his explosive power and a deadly trick up his sleeve. Instead of just bucking riders off, Bodacious had mastered a devastating move, launching them forward, only to whip his massive head up at the last second, slamming his skull into their faces with bone-shattering force. No rider had ever walked away from him unscathed. Tuff knew what he was up against. He had drawn Bodacious in the short go-round, and the entire arena buzzed with nervous excitement. They knew this was more than just a ride, it was a showdown. A war between an unstoppable cowboy and an untamed beast. As Hedeman climbed onto the bull, gripping his rope tightly, he leaned forward, trying to stay ahead of Bodacious's lethal moves. The chute gate burst open, and then disaster. Bodacious exploded out, twisting violently, and before Hedeman could react, the bull snapped his head up with horrifying precision. The impact was brutal. A sickening crack echoed through the arena as Bodacious's skull slammed into Hedeman's face. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. Others stood frozen in shock. Hedeman crumpled to the dirt. Blood poured from his face, pooling beneath him. The sheer force of the hit had obliterated nearly every bone in his face. His cheekbones were shattered, his nose broken, his jaw barely holding together. And yet, in a moment that defied all logic, Hedeman did the unthinkable. He stood up. His face was a mess of blood and agony, his vision blurred, but pure adrenaline carried him forward. He refused to be carried out. Instead, he walked out of the arena on his own 2 feet. A warrior who had just survived an encounter with death itself. Only later, as he lay on a gurney, did the full extent of his injuries become clear. The doctors who examined him were stunned. At first, they thought he had been shot. His face required 2 grueling surgeries, 13 hours under the knife, and 6 titanium plates just to hold the bones together. The pain was unbearable, the recovery long and brutal. He lost 25 pounds, and when his young son Lane saw him, he didn't recognize his own father. Only the sound of his voice confirmed that the broken man before him was still Tuff Hedeman. And yet, incredibly, this wasn't even his first brush with near death. In 1993, he had been temporarily paralyzed after a brutal fall at the National Finals Rodeo. That injury had cost him an entire season, but in 1995 he came roaring back, ranking third in the world. Even after his face had been destroyed, he refused to quit. Just 6 weeks after his surgery, Hedeman was back in Las Vegas for the National Finals Rodeo. The pain was still fresh, but so was his determination. He rode 5 of the 10 bulls he faced, a feat that would have been impossible for anyone else. And then, in the 5th round, fate tested him once more. He drew Bodacious. The arena fell silent. Every eye was on him. Would he dare to climb on the bull that had nearly ended his life? As the chute opened, Bodacious charged out, alone. Hedeman had made his decision. He would not ride. The crowd erupted, not in disappointment but in respect. They understood. They had seen the carnage, the brutality of what Bodacious could do, and they knew that sometimes even the toughest cowboys had to make the hardest choice. His story remains one of the most harrowing tales in rodeo history, a reminder of just how dangerous this sport can be and just how tough some men truly are.
Mason Lowe was more than just a cowboy with grit. He was a rising star in the world of professional bull riding, someone who lived and breathed the sport with every ounce of passion in his bones. At just 25 years old, he was ranked among the top bull riders on the planet, competing against the fiercest beasts in arenas filled with roaring fans. But as thrilling as the sport can be, it also carries risks that lurk behind every 8-second ride. And on January 15, 2019, during the PBR Velocity Tour at the National Western Stock Show in Denver, those risks proved tragically real. Mason was matched with a powerful bull named Hard Times, a name that would soon carry far too much weight. The ride began like many others, with Mason holding firm and the bull thrashing in an all-out attempt to throw him. Within moments, Mason was bucked off, but what followed was the kind of moment that sends chills through the rodeo world. As he hit the ground, Hard Times circled back, and in a single, crushing step, the bull's hind legs landed directly on Mason's chest. The crowd gasped. The announcers fell silent, and for a brief, surreal moment, time seemed to freeze. Mason managed to stand, walk a few steps, and even looked like he might be okay, until he collapsed. Emergency crews rushed in and transported him to Denver Health, but the damage was devastating. Despite wearing a protective vest, Mason suffered massive internal injuries, severe trauma to his heart and aorta. He passed away shortly after, sending shockwaves through the entire bull riding community. Mason's death wasn't just a loss to the sport. It was a deeply personal blow to those who knew him. He was known as a quiet, humble, hard-working man who never chased the spotlight, even though his talent could have filled stadiums. His fellow riders described him as kind-hearted and fearless, someone who didn't just ride bulls, but truly respected them. The Professional Bull Riders, PBR organization, responded swiftly, honoring Mason's memory with a touching arena tribute, black ribbon patches, and a wave of support from fans and fellow competitors alike. A memorial fund was set up, which raised over $200,000 for his wife Abby and his family, a testament to the deep respect the rodeo world had for him. The bull Hard Times was not blamed for the incident. It was determined to be a tragic accident, one that highlighted just how unpredictable and dangerous this sport truly is. Unlike most sports, where bruises and sprains are the biggest threat, bull riding plays with much higher stakes, where one wrong step can alter everything. In the wake of Mason's passing, PBR established the Mason Lowe Award, an annual honor given to the rider who earns the highest marked ride of the season in the Unleash the Beast series. It's a fitting tribute for someone who gave his all every time he climbed into the chute. His legacy lives on, not only in that award, but also in the hearts of every rider who straps in, not just for glory, but for the love of the sport, just like Mason did. His story is a sobering reminder that behind the cheers, pyrotechnics, and adrenaline of bull riding, there's a quiet bravery at play, men and women chasing a dream, fully aware of the risks, riding anyway. Mason Lowe wasn't just a cowboy, he was a symbol of courage, a professional who met the toughest challenges with strength and humility. And though he's no longer riding among us, his spirit will forever echo through the chutes of every PBR arena.
On March the 24th, 2000, under the bright lights of the arena in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the air was electric with anticipation. The Professional Bull Riders Bud Light Cup Series was in full swing, a brutal clash between the world's best cowboys and the fiercest bulls ever bred. Among those who stepped into the ring that night was Glen Keelley, a 30-year-old Canadian bull rider from Alberta. He wasn't just another competitor, he was one of the best, ranked 9th in the world by points and 6th by earnings. With over a decade of experience, Glen was at the height of his career, chasing greatness one 8-second ride at a time. But on this night, fate had placed him against Promised Land, a force of nature disguised as a bull. Promised Land was no ordinary opponent. The 1999 PBR Bull of the Year, he was a terrifying blend of power and unpredictability, a 2,000-pound juggernaut with no mercy for any man who dared mount him. Countless riders had failed to last against him, sent flying in mere seconds. But Glen wasn't one to back down. He had faced dangerous bulls before. He was ready. The arena fell into a tense hush as Glen settled onto the beast's back, his grip tightening around the bull rope. The gate exploded open, and chaos erupted. Promised Land launched forward like a cannonball, bucking violently, twisting mid-air, throwing his full weight into the fight. Glen held on, muscles straining, his body moving with the bull's erratic movements. The seconds stretched, 4, 5, 6, until suddenly, with a savage twist, Promised Land sent him flying. Glen crashed hard into the dirt, the impact jarring but not unfamiliar. He had taken countless falls before. He tried to roll away, to get back to his feet, but there was no time. Promised Land's massive hind legs came down like a sledgehammer, crushing Glen's chest. A gasp swept through the crowd. The moment hung in the air, heavy and unbearable. Glen lay still. Then, against all odds, he moved. The audience erupted in stunned relief as Glen, battered and broken, somehow stood up. Assisted by the medical team, he walked out of the arena, even managing a joke with the staff. To those watching, it looked like just another brutal fall, another close call for a tough-as-nails cowboy. But behind the scenes, something was terribly wrong. By the time Glen reached the University of New Mexico hospital, the situation had turned dire. He had suffered devastating internal injuries. His liver was lacerated, his body fighting a losing battle against the damage. At first, his vitals remained stable, offering a fleeting glimmer of hope. But as doctors rushed him into surgery, the horrifying truth became clear. The damage was far worse than anyone had realized. The bleeding was uncontrollable. Before the clock struck 10 p.m., Glen Keelley was gone. The news spread like wildfire. A man in his prime, a cowboy chasing his dreams, was suddenly no more. It was the first high-profile bull riding death in North America in 6 years, a grim reminder of the unforgiving nature of the sport. Glen's family knew these risks all too well. Years earlier, his brother Jason had been gored by a bull, left in a coma for 2 weeks, and yet Glen had never hesitated. Bull riding wasn't just a sport for him. It was his purpose, his passion, his legacy. He had made a promise, to himself, to his family, that 2000 would be his final year in competition. He was planning to walk away. But on that night in Albuquerque, Glen Keelley rode one last time. The rodeo continued the next day, but the atmosphere had changed. The riders wore memorial stickers on their vests, a silent tribute to the fallen cowboy. A press conference was held, addressing the tragic accident. Dr. Tandy Freeman, who had treated Glen, delivered the devastating truth. His vitals were stable until surgeons saw the extent of the damage. By then, it was too late. He bled to death before they could save him. But Glen's name was not forgotten. Today, his legacy endures. The Glen Keelley Memorial Bull Riding event was established in his honor, alongside a scholarship fund to help young athletes chase their dreams. Every year, at the PBR World Finals, the best Canadian bull rider receives the Glen Keelley Award, ensuring that his courage, resilience, and fighting spirit live on. Because Glen Keelley wasn't just a cowboy, he was a legend.
In December of 1994, the glittering lights of Las Vegas set the stage for the National Finals Rodeo, the Super Bowl of bull riding. The arena was packed, the crowd electric, and the energy palpable as the best rodeo athletes in the world gathered to test their grit against some of the fiercest bulls in the sport. Among them was Brent Thurman, a 25-year-old rising star from Texas whose talent and fearless spirit had already earned him a spot among the greats. Known for his calm demeanor and unwavering focus, Brent wasn't just another cowboy in the lineup. He was a fan favorite with a promising future. That night, Brent was matched with Red Wolf, a massive and notoriously unpredictable bull with a reputation for giving riders the fight of their lives. Red Wolf wasn't just powerful, he was intelligent, calculating, and known for the kind of athleticism that made him as famous as the men who tried to ride him. For most cowboys, drawing Red Wolf meant a long night, but for Brent it was a challenge he seemed ready to face. He climbed into the chute, adjusted his grip, gave a quick nod, and the gate burst open. What followed was a ride that showcased Brent's remarkable skill. He held on, balanced and focused, as Red Wolf exploded out of the gate and twisted with raw fury. Brent lasted the full 8 seconds, an incredible feat against a bull like that, and the crowd roared in approval. But as the buzzer sounded and Brent dismounted, tragedy struck. Red Wolf, instead of galloping away, spun around and delivered a crushing blow to Brent's head with his horn, followed by a brutal trampling as the bull passed over him. The celebration turned to horror in an instant. Brent lay unconscious in the dirt as medics rushed to his side. He was immediately transported to the hospital, where doctors discovered he had suffered severe head injuries. He was placed in a coma and remained in critical condition. For 6 days, family, friends, and the rodeo community held their breath, hoping for a miracle. But on December 17, 1994, Brent Thurman passed away, surrounded by loved ones. He was only 25 years old. His death was a heartbreaking moment that shook the entire rodeo world to its core. He wasn't just a competitor, he was a symbol of courage, sportsmanship, and determination. In the wake of his passing, the rodeo community came together not just to mourn, but to honor Brent's legacy. His story became a powerful reminder of the dangers these athletes face every time they step into the arena, and the unmatched bravery it takes to do what they do. To keep his memory alive, the Brent Thurman Memorial Award was established, given each year at the NFR to the rider who earns the highest scored bull ride. It's not just an award, it's a tribute to Brent's spirit, skill, and the mark he left on the sport. Even today, decades later, Brent's name is remembered with respect and reverence. His final ride may have ended in tragedy, but it also served as a lasting symbol of the risks, the passion, and the heart that define the world of bull riding. Brent Thurman rode with courage, lived with purpose, and left behind a legacy that continues to inspire every cowboy who dares to climb on the back of a bull.